So welcome to the test preparation for the Module 1 Summative Assessment. I am going to stop sharing this thing for just a moment because I want to share a different thing. So I'm going to share this tab right here. So what we are going to be doing is this Module 1. This is the review for the Module 1 Summative Assessment. This is also a reteach, and I should actually include that. Let me erase this. Review/reteach. Which that means if you took the evaluation, the assessment, and you did not do as well as you wanted to on it, this is the greatest place to go to get exactly what you need to know for the evaluation. So this test is on, technically due today is when the official deadline is, but it's loose deadline. It's just a suggested date, and that is September 15th. And there are 16 questions on it. 6 questions come from A.REI.4b and 6 questions come from N.CN.2. The first one, A.REI.4b, which is basically the standard about solving quadratics. And then the other one is the N.CN.2. In fact, it stands for numbers.complex numbers.2, like the second standard, which is about adding, subtracting, and multiplying complex numbers. So A stands for algebra, and I don't remember what REI stands for. I'll look it up later if it's important to you. But what my goal is for today's lesson is to do a reteach of those standards. I'm assuming it's a reteach because all of you at least tried it on the workbooks and the checkpoints, right? So here we are. Those two concepts. Here's the first one, solving quadratics. And one of the ways I don't think that the lesson really dove into very much was on the different ways of solving quadratics. So I have here different ways of solving quadratics, and then we're going to do some examples of them. So the first one that I don't think that they hit very much was solving it graphically. I think it's the easiest way, but there are still limitations to it. And I'll show you those limitations. This little star down here, in fact, I should put like the star right here, goes with this one. That's a limitation of it. So the first one is this. So we have x squared plus 2x minus 15 equals 0. Before we do that, I need to talk about these little tiny cute baby graphs here. So these, all of the quadratics have graphs that are parabolas. The parabolas could be smiley face parabolas or frowny face parabolas. And these 3 little graphs, I only gave smiley face parabolas. They are positive. Like the leading coefficient is positive. That's how I know that they're smiley face. So we look at how many times it crosses the x-axis. Now, there is an official definition for what a 0 is versus a solution, but for our purposes and what you need to know to do this test, you don't need to know that there's a difference, and because they basically mean the same thing. If the parabola crosses the x-axis, remember that this right here is your x-axis. Let me do all my work today. I will do it in bright green. Okay, so this is the x-axis right there, right? So it crosses the x-axis twice. Those 2 places where it crosses, that's the solution, and that's it. I'll show you how nice and easy that is if you use a graphing calculator like Desmos. If it touches only once, there's only one solution. If it doesn't touch, there's no real solutions. There are imaginary solutions, but you don't have to go into that very much, so I'm not going to. Okay. Okay. So examples of that: x squared plus 2x minus 15 equals 0. So let me show you Desmos. So you can type that in. So x squared. It's a little bit funky, isn't it? So x. Oops, I pushed a button. X squared. What was okay? Plus, what did I say? See, I forgot already. Small mind. Okay, let's look again here. It is x squared plus 2x subtract 15. X squared plus 2x subtract 15. And you can put equals 0 if you want to, but you don't have to. So this is how awesome that is. You graph that, then you tap on the points where they cross, and boom, that is one answer. That is the other answer. So the answer to that would be -5 and 3. So you come back to your problem and you would say the graph, and it's going to do a quick sketch of the graph. There was one at -5 and one at 3. So the solutions would be -5 and 3. And then we're done. And that's it. That's it. That's like all you have to do. So awesome, right? Did you guys try any of them like this when you were doing the test? Hi, Lacey. Yeah, it's awesome, right? Because you just have to graph it and then tap on the graph and it'll tell you where it crosses. So let me do another one like this. So x squared plus 2x plus 4. Yeah, it's very nice and simple. Okay, so x squared, and I'm just going to edit x squared plus 4x plus 4. Right, is that what I said? So plus 4x plus 4. Notice it only comes down and touches it once. So I tap on that and it's at -2. And that is it. You're done. So right here, I'm just going to draw a quick graph so I can see what it was at. Oops, that was really a bad graph, but who cares because it's just my little sketch. It was at -2, so the answer is -2. There are limitations to this. So though this seems so much easier, and I agree, it is so much easier, it's very simple, there are limitations to it. So let's do this next one, x squared plus 7x and subtract 44. So if I did x squared, and the nice thing is if you're using decimals, you can just go back in and edit what you have. You don't have to delete the whole thing. So 7x subtract 44. So I did that. And you'll notice the graph is there, but then I click on this number. Oh, and that one. Oh, see this one? Is that what I wanted? Well, see, you could do it with that. I should change a number so it fits what I want. Sorry. Let me change this to 45, and then you'll see what I mean. So let me switch this to 45. And then I come back in here and do 45. Oops, 45. Come on, catch up with me. There we go. Weird decimal, weird decimal. You cannot put the decimals in. It will squawk at you. So if it's a decimal, basically that's a good tip that you're going to have to do it a different way. And that way is going to be either completing the square or the quadratic formula. So decimals mean more complicated, like more complicated answers means you have to do it a different way, more complicated way, which it's not that complicated once you get used to it. So I'm going to put that little rule here. Decimals mean your answer is going to have like some square root in it. Oh, and if you graphed it and it didn't cross it, so this means there's going to be an I in your solution, and you cannot get I in graphing it. Okay, so that's one way that you can use for pretty much everything. In fact, you can use that same way. If you can factor it, you can graph it. But I wanted to go over how to factor just in case. And I think actually almost everybody that took the test that I've seen so far, graphing, you guys, factoring, you factor like a boss. So, but I just wanted to show the second step because some people, when they were doing this one, they could factor it like a boss, but then they forgot about this part, like this set each factor equal to 0. And I'll show you what I mean. So let's just see in the chat. Can you guys see what the two factors are of this problem right here, where we have this x squared plus 5x subtract 36? What would that factor into be? Can you see it? Do you remember how to factor? Any of you that are here in the class? Welcome, Stephen. Who else have I not said hi to? Welcome, Aiden. Nobody? If you have no idea, let me know you have no idea. And that's okay. Got a couple people typing. Charlie's working on it. Very good. This one right here. Thank you for asking, Stephen. This one right here. What does this look like it factors into being? Because we know, first of all, that they're going to be x. It's going to be two sets of parentheses because when we multiply them, it equals that. But what does it factor into being? If you are a little bit stuck on this and you want to know how to do it, let me just show you the way that I go about doing this. Is I take the very last number, that's the C. If you remember, the first number is the A, that's the B, and that's the C. I take the C, and I think, what are all the possible things that I could get to multiply to get 36? And then I go through and I start with all the numbers. Like I start with 1, and then 1 multiplied by 36 is 36. And then I do 2. 2 multiplied by 18, and 3 could multiply by 12. 4 could multiply by 9, and then I'd have to start going back around again. So now I'm looking for which ones, because it's a negative 36, which ones could I add or subtract the combination to get a positive 5? Not 9 and 3. 9 is for sure involved. Oh, I'm so glad I see multiple users. Very good. Fantastic, Vinny. Good job. Yep. So, because 8 and so let me just go through this. Like 2, if I did 1 subtract 36 or 36 subtract 1, that is not ever going to be 5. And I got the 5 because I'm aim for the B, like this B that's right here. Like, let me do this. Like this part is what we're aiming for. And there's no way that I could have 1 and 36 and add or subtract them and get 5. So same thing with 2 and 18. No way I could add or subtract to get 5. Same thing with 3 and 2 would not possibly equal 5. But if I had, just like Vinny said, if I had 9 and a negative 4, then I could get them. So then I can put a positive 9 here and a negative 4 there. And that's what it factors to being. Does this look familiar? You guys remember doing this in Algebra 1? Okay. Now, this is the next step. This is the official next step, and then I'll go over like a shortcut for what to do once you get to this point. So the official next step is you take each one of these factors, and so let me take a different color pen because I want one. So that's one factor. I take that factor and I set it equal to 0, because what we're saying is if I had the left parentheses multiplied by the right parentheses, I would get 0. So only one of those factors has to be 0. And if like x plus 9 was 0, then who cares what's in the right parentheses, because it's just going to multiply to 0, right? Because once you multiply it to 0, you're done. Okay, so x plus 9 equals 0, so I could subtract 9 from both sides, and I would get that x is equal to negative 9. So that's one of my answers. And then you do that for the same one. Same thing for the other one. X minus 4, subtract 4 equals 0. So add 4, and then x would equal 4. Okay, so we got, and if you can learn how to see, so this is just like pretend like you've done these a lot of times, and maybe you have, maybe you don't remember how to do it. But this stuff, when you aim for the B, you get the factors, the solutions. I'm going to put here the solutions are the opposite. So meaning positive or negative of the factors. That's kind of my shortcut with that. So if you can factor it, then you know that the solutions are going to be the opposite of those. On the test, one of the things, the answers that they will deliberately put in there to be a decoy is they'll give a problem like this, and then they'll say that one of the answers is positive 9 and negative 4 for the solutions. But the solutions are the opposite of those factors. So you can't say those. So they're sneaky like that. They know the mistakes you're going to be making. So just watch out that they're the opposites of the factors, like positive, negative. All right. So then same type of thing for this next one, x squared subtract 6x plus 9. It would be what? What would that factor into being? So you're looking for factors of 9 that you could add to get negative 6. So 9. Factors of 9, and I'm aiming for negative 6. So let me come up here. Let me change the color because I want to. 9, and I'm aiming for negative 6. So I could have 1 and 9, and no. I could have 3 and 3 to get negative 6. Well, they would both have to be negatives. Oops, that's supposed to be a regular negative, but then my pen went blue. Negative, negative. Can you guys see this okay? It's kind of tiny. Yeah, negative 3 and negative 3. And so that gets it. So it's -3, -3. And since they're the exact same thing answer, that means there's only one solution. And let's see if you guys can figure it out without actually having to do the other step. What is the solution? If -3 is the factor, x minus 3 is the factor, what is the solution? Nice, Vinny. Yeah, so the solution is 3. So remember, it's the opposite. Good job. So I'm going to go like that. And it would be +3 is the solution. Okay, so that's factoring. But mainly, if you can factor, you can graph. So I always try graphing. And if the graph doesn't work, like if there's the weird decimals, then I'm going to need to do the square root stuff, which means we're going to have to either do it the square root way, complete the square, or quadratic formula. I'm just going to tell you right now, it's not actually one of your standards that we're testing on this assessment. So I'm not going to go over the quadratic formula for the sake of time and because why go over something when you're not going to be tested on it right now. Okay, so the square root. So you have to get the square alone on one side. Another way of putting that is you have to isolate the square. And both of these problems, it both happens to be isolated. Then the next step is you're going to take the positive or negative square root of both sides. So I have to positive, negative square root, positive, negative square root. I'm just going to keep on going because I'm wild like that. And I want to do two problems at the same time. Whoa, living la vida loca. Okay. You have a square and a square root. Those, by definition, are the opposite, like opposite functions. So squaring and square root are opposite functions. They cancel each other out. So all we'd be left with on the left side on this one is x plus 7. And on the right side, we'd have positive or negative. And then what's the square root of 81? Anybody in the chat? Square root of 81. Nice job, Steven. Okay, so 9. So then we want to get x alone, and we would subtract 7. Subtract 7. So our answer, we have two answers. So x is equal to -7 plus or minus 9, which means we have -7 plus 9 and -7 minus 9. So plus 9 is +2. Subtract 9 is -16. So those are our two answers. Does that make sense? Square to both sides, split it. Like, please square to both sides, and then your final answer, then move the other number over. I should put that. So get the square root alone, square root both sides, add or subtract the number that's by the x. Add or subtract number by the x, and then split your answer. But then you're going to get stuff like this one that we're going to work on right now. Because I can see for sure that I'd be left with, I'm going to do a different color because, again, I want to, but I think it's important to know that it's something different. So it would be x subtract 3 is equal to, now there is no pretty square root of 5. So we're just going to leave it positive or negative square root of 5. Then the next step says to add or subtract the number by the x. And so I will add 3. So then I'll have x is equal to 3 plus or minus square root of 5. If you wanted to, then you would split this into two answers. So it'd be 3 plus the square root of 5 and 3 minus the square root of 5. But we can't go any further than that because we don't, square root of 5 is a nasty decimal. And that's where we went up to, like when we were seeing the graphing ones, that's what, like a decimal. That's where the decimals come in. That's how you take care of decimals. You should have instead a square root. Okay. How do you guys feel on that stuff? Does that make a little bit more sense how to do the square root way? Good. Good. And the steps are right here. I'm sorry, let me like number them better. 1, 2, like it's usually number 1 is already done for you. 2, there was step 3, and then step 4 we said split. So there were the 4 steps to do those. Sorry that it's kind of jumbled. The last way is completing the square. What that says is we want to force it to look like something squared. We know that it's supposed to be, and so we're going to force it to be. Hold on a second. Sorry, coughing. It'll tickle my throat. I've been talking too much. Okay. So let's go through how to do this part. So we want this something squared equals a number. That's our goal. That's our vision for this whole part. But we don't have it because, but we can get it. So this is how I do this. Is I start, we put the steps in here. So step 1. Move. So I always check. Actually, I put step 0 because this is not technically one of the steps. I always check, can you factor it? And if you can factor it, just factor it because your life is going to be so much better. Yeah, I was just coughing. Yeah, I was talking too much. Okay, so always check to see if you can factor it or graph it because if you can get a nice number that way, check it that way because it's going to make your life easier. Okay, but once you've determined you can't factor it because we know that the factors of 25 are 1 and 25 or 5 and 5, and there's no way that we can get any combination of those two numbers to equal -8. So for sure we can't factor it. If you graphed it, you'd get decimals. Like it's all this no bueno stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to move the C, and I'm going to put quotation marks around the C and remind you that the number in front of the x squared is the A, the number in front of the plane x is the B, and the last number is the C. So we're going to move C and leave a blank. So I would subtract 25, and then I'm going to leave everything that was there before. I'm going to leave the x squared, subtract 8x, and then I'm going to have plus blank equals, and then I'm going to come back to the other thing, -25 plus blank. So the blanks, I'll show you why you're leaving the blank. It's going to be weird, and there are technically lots of other steps that you can do to do this, but I'm going to jump to what works for me and I think is the most clear for students. Because again, what we're aiming for is something squared that equals a number. To make this explanation more clear, let me come up to what we did on, it was on this one. Well, on this one, if I were to factor this, it would be x plus 2 multiplied by x plus 2. And if I FOILed that out, I would get x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4. So I had 2 of them. And anything, and so I could technically write this as x plus 2 squared. Because I could go from here to there. I could technically write it like that. Anytime that you have something squared, if you were to write it out, like go back to this and then FOIL it out, you're always going to have 2 of the exact same thing in the middle, right? Because I would have 2 times by x and x times by 2, like back and forth, right? You're always going to have 2 of them. So this is why we're going to do the following step. The next step is we're going to put parentheses, squared with an x, and I'm going to take that number and I'm going to divide it by 2 because there are always 2 of them. So 8 divided by 2. So then step 2, so write x and then something squared like this. Write that. So that's what I wrote. Step 3 is divide the b. We're going to do b divided by 2. I'm going to write that instead. B divided by 2. Question, Stephen. You raised your hand. Can I zoom in on this? Will that help? Okay. Okay. So you're going to take that b and divide it by 2. So -8 divided by 2. Stephen, if you want to turn your mic on, you can. I don't know if you can or not. You can type it also. Oh, okay. You can watch this recording. If you have to go, Stephen, you can watch this recording. It will be on the like the same place that you got to this before. When we're done, I'll push stop, and then there will be a recording at the bottom, and you can watch that. So, okay. So -8 divided by 2 is -4. In the parentheses, like right there. So we're going to put right there. Step 4 is you're still going to use that number, and then you're going to square. You're going to do whatever that b divided by 2. You're going to square in these blanks. I know it's a lot of arrows, but it makes more sense. See you later, Stephen. Good luck. All right. So -4 squared. Remember, when you're squaring something, -4 multiplied by -4 is positive 16. Ooh, I just clicked on my hand, hit something. Okay, so we're going to take this, and it's going to come up here. 4 squared is 16, and then 16. And then step 5 is you're just going to combine right side. So -25 plus 16 is -9. And now we have forced the something squared equals a number. See, now what we've done is we've forced x plus something squared or minus something squared equals a number. That's what we have now. And now we can follow the same steps that we had on the last one. So we're going to do add or subtract the square root of both. I mean, we're going to take the positive or negative square root of both sides. I know this is getting complicated, and I'm sorry if it is for you. The quadratic formula is actually a nicer way, but on the test, you have to know how to do the thing that we're doing right now. So square root, positive or negative, square root, positive or negative. So then we'd have x subtract 4 equals, and then what is, you guys remember what the square root of 9 is? Nice job, Vinny. 3. And then we don't forget the positive or negative in front. And then what happens with the negative? Do you remember what happens with that negative? There's a negative inside the square root. It becomes an I. Does that look familiar? Okay, and then we're going to move that 4 over, and then we're going to be done. So add 4, add 4. So x would equal 4 plus or minus 3i. If we were to graph that problem right now, it would not cross the x-axis. Oh, and I was going to change this into a 45 also because I did that on the last one. If it is something that you can actually factor, actually, I am going to do this one because I think on the test, it actually puts the, yeah, you need to know this. I'll just leave it like that. If it is something that you could factor, you can still do it this way. Yeah, and it's still kind of confusing, Vinny, I think. My opinion. It's still a bit weird, especially the first few times that you've seen it, because you're kind of like, what in the heck? So let me go through this next one and see if we can follow these steps and then see if it makes more sense. So first thing, we're going to see if you can factor or graph it. Technically, this one you can, but we're going to move on because that's what we need to do to do this problem. So we're going to move to C. So we're going to, we'll add 44. And then we'll have x squared plus 7x plus blank equals 44 plus blank. And then we're going to take this and we're going to divide it by 2. So it's going to be x plus, because half of 7 is 3.5, squared equals, and then before I can put what it equals, I have to add what 3.5 squared is. If you're like me, you don't have 3.5 squared memorized. If you did, then you are awesomer than I am. 3.5 squared is 12.25. So we're going to put that up there. 12.25. 12.25. So 44 plus 12.25. This is a weird problem. Okay, is 56.25. Okay, that's fine. And then we're going to square root of both sides. So I'm going to change color now, even though I've done a bunch of steps in the same thing. Square root, square root. So x plus 3.5 equals the positive or negative square root of 56.25. Good thing we have a calculator, because I can go over here and do the square root of 56.25. It's 7.5. So that's going to be, that's a 5 right there. So x plus 3.5 equals positive or negative 7.5. So now we're going to subtract 3.5 from both sides. Subtract 3.5 and then split it. So x is equal to negative 3.5 plus 7.5 and negative 3.5 minus 7.5. So that's going to be, if you were to subtract those, that's like doing 7.5 minus 3.5, which is 4. And negative 7.5 plus 3.5 is like doing negative 11. So then their answers are 4 and negative 11. Technically, just factor it. If you had to just do the problem raw, just factor it. It does want you to know the steps, and so that's why I've gone through and I've shown you all the steps, but that's how you do that. Okay. Dingling a cuckoo, like, doesn't make sense. And then technically to get a 3, so you have a 4 is only if you get all 6 questions right on this one. A 3 is if you get 4, no, right. A 3 is, let me look at the thing. I wrote it down. That's why we write things down. Uh-oh, that stopped sharing that one. I did not mean to do that. Let me come back. Start marrying. Tab. Okay. And I wanted to look here. I had it open earlier, so it'll be easy. Yep, a 3 is if you get one of them wrong, it's a 3. If you get 2 or 3 of them wrong, it's a 2, which is still all passing. So, yeah, you just have to get most of them right, and you'll be good. Okay, quadratic formula. I love the quadratic formula. You basically end up with the same type of thing, but for the sake of time, you don't have to know all the details and steps on how to do it. So I'm going to skip over that for now. Okay, now there are 6 questions from the standard that's just about the complex numbers. And so here's a brief thing on the complex numbers. Complex numbers are all numbers, technically. All numbers in the whole wide world are complex numbers. And there's a real part and then there's an imaginary part. Yep, that's what you need to know. And that I is equal to the square root of negative 1. That's when we were doing those problems before. If there was a negative inside the square root, we just put an I outside. Pro tip, if you're ever writing it, do the I as a cursive lowercase I, because if you try to do it like a normal I, it ends up looking like a 1 and you make mistakes in your calculations. Speaking from experience, it's no bueno. That means no good. Okay. So first thing on those, you're just going to have to add them. Adding like terms, it's just like terms, and that's all you're doing. So I have 2 here. I have, oh, did my thing die and it didn't tell me? Let me try this again. Okay, 2 there and a negative 7. And then 3i and negative 4i. So 2 minus 7 would be negative 5. And then 3 subtract 4 would be negative 1. And I don't have to put the 1. I can just put I. And then we're done. Same thing with this one. So we have negative 5 plus 8 would be, so, and I can write this out. Let me write the steps. So 2 subtract 7. And then 3i subtract 4i. So 2 subtract 7 was negative 5. And then 3i subtract 4i was negative I. All right, so negative 5 plus 8 is 3. And then 7i plus I is 8i. Any questions on those? Most people are getting these right. It's like if you understood it from the, it's not too hard to understand from the lesson. Okay, the negative, this is the trickiest thing with the negative. Make sure you like distribute that negative or the subtracting sign. So make sure that these switch. So this, I changed this to a positive. Oh, let me undo that so that you can see a little bit better what I mean. Okay, so I make this a positive, make that a positive, and then just make this a negative. And then I do just like I did on the one above. So 1 plus 8, so 1 plus 8 is 9. And then negative 6, subtract 4, negative 6i, subtract 4i is negative 10i. Pretty good on this one? That's going to be a negative. That'll be a negative. Negative 5, subtract 8. It would be negative 13. And then 7i subtract I would be 6i. Okay. And actually the fun, anyway. And then foiling, I didn't get to write this one down because I ran out of time. So, because you guys were here. Because I just barely started going through the test. I think I've graded maybe 5 people's tests. So I just started going through it, and then I realized, oh my gosh, class is starting soon. So here's an example. 7 plus 3i multiplied by 7 subtract 3i. So it's going to be the same thing. You're going to, step 1 is you're going to FOIL it, but then you have to remember that I squared, and I put that up here and I forgot to write it out. I squared would be like saying the square root of negative 1 squared, which would just be negative 1. So once you do like FOIL it, combine the like terms, then you're going to have to remember that I squared is really negative 1, and so then you're going to have to simplify with that in mind. So first, outside, inside, last. So the first one's 7 multiplied by 7 is 49. Outside, 7 multiplied by negative 3i is negative 21i. And then 3i, that's the inside, multiplied by 7 is plus 21i. And then the last, 3i multiplied by negative 3i would be negative 9i squared. And actually at this step, I don't like to combine yet first. I'm going to squeeze this step in right there. I would rather do it right there. And so let me just show you what I mean. I go like this. I'm like, okay, I squared I know is negative 1. And then negative 9 multiplied by negative 1, it's just like saying plus 9. Then I combine like terms. So 49 plus 9 is 58, and then those were opposites and they canceled. So this would be the answer. Or if we had, and by the way, this is a little side note. When you have 7 plus something and 7 minus something, like one of them, they're the exact same numbers, but the only difference was this one was positive and that one's negative, then we call those a conjugate pair. Okay, complex conjugate pair. Anyway, okay, coming back to the next problem, we have 3 plus 4i multiplied by 5 plus 6i. Same thing. FOIL. So 3 multiplied by 5 is 15. 3 multiplied by 6i is 18i. 4i multiplied by 5 is 20i. And then 4 multiplied by 6 is 24. I multiplied by I is I squared. Then I'm going to come here. Change color. Oh, that's not different enough. Pink. Okay. This will be negative 1. So that means this right here would be negative, might subtract 24. So then 15 subtract 24. Let's see, there's 5 plus 4 is negative 9. And I always put the real number first. And then 18 plus 20 would be 38i. Okay. Is this making sense? You guys feel like you've got it? Okay, and the last one. This is like, I call this like the order of operations. Complex. Really creative name. Okay, 7 subtract 8i subtract I parentheses 9 minus 10i. So according to the order of operations, let me remind you, this is please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. What do we have to do for that first? You know what? I had another, oh, what was the other thing? I don't remember. Somebody else had some funny stuff that they said of that. Like do you guys remember in biology that you have like a kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species? I think that's how it goes. For me to remember that, I remembered that it was kindly please crap on Fred's good shoes. I don't know where that, I mean, junior high, it sticks in your brain. Okay, what do we have to do first on this problem? What is the first operation that needs to happen? Charlie, do you know what they're talking about? We're going to come back to this because this is the last one that we have to do. But yes, that's good. The P instead of polynomials, it stood for parentheses. The P in PEMDAS stands for parentheses, but polynomial sounds like it fit too, doesn't it? Okay. All right, order of operations. So we need to do, so there, the parentheses, we can't simplify anything inside the parentheses, so we don't need to use that. There are no exponents on this yet, so we're not going to do that. The multiplication, this is the only multiplication, is this part right here. So we're going to distribute this negative I is going to be multiplied into both of those. So 7 subtract 8i stays there. And then negative I multiplied by 9 is negative 9i. And negative I multiplied by negative 10i, so negative multiplied by negative would be positive 10. And then I multiplied by I is I squared. So now we have to go back because now we have an exponent. But what is I squared? What does I squared really equal? Negative 1. Fantastic, Vinny. Okay. It does indeed equal negative 1. So that means that this part, let me switch colors because I want to. And because this part right here is really subtract 10. And then we have 7 subtract 10. It would be negative 3. And negative 8i subtract 9i is, anybody? What is negative 8i subtract 9i? Nice, so negative 17i. All right, that is it. So that's everything that you're going to need to know for the test. There are 2 standards. Everything that we just did with the I stuff, that is all one standard. That's the N.CN.2. And then the other stuff with all the quadratic stuff is A.REI.4b. And yes. So any questions before we are done with this? All right. Good luck on the test. And I will see you on the other side of the test. I'll let you know about corrections. Vinny is on the screen, says Cheyenne, but that is actually Vinny. Yes, that's Vinny's preferred name. See you tomorrow, Charlie.